Sean, some time ago, Russia agreed with the United Nations sanctions against North Korea, and evidence is emerging that some of the weapons that are being used by Russia actually come from North Korea. What have we learnt?
It's just a bit bizarre, this whole story. For me, it undermines some of the core principles around the United Nations. The story is that there have been the United Nations Security Council, of which Russia is a member, put 9 different sanctions against North Korea as a result of their nuclear weapons program and the like back in 2006. 3 years later, the United Nations Security Council put another load of sanctions on that said any weapons can't be exported from North Korea apart from small arms and a couple of other categories. And in 2015, all weapons were banned from being exported from North Korea. So that's pretty clear. Russia was a signatory to that. Back in September last year, there were lots of news reports of President Putin and some of the senior dignitaries of Russia visiting North Korea, looking around weapons factories. Russia's short of weapons, short of missiles, short of artillery rounds. Lots of reports that Russia was buying weapons from North Korea, completely against the United Nations sanctions, which they had signed up to. Now, Russia's denied that it's ever bought any weapons, even though the Royal United Services Institute have been tracking, and there's been over 1 million rounds apparently being shipped across.
And where's the evidence from? What have they actually
discovered?
Yeah,
so the interesting bit of this tale, Russia just says, no, we've not been doing it. There's been a representative of the Conflict Arms Resolution, I think it is, charity that's been looking at the remains of weapons that have been fired against Ukraine. In those weapons, some of the long-range missiles, they found, first of all, the writings are characters used in Korea's alphabet that isn't used anywhere else. And also on the casings of these weapons is stamped the number 112 in all over the place. That is the calendar year 2023 in the Korean alphabet. Now, these are not coincidences. This is actual proof on the ground that a lot of these weapons have come directly from North Korea, being used by the Russians. But even more interesting was that when these weapons were actually properly dissected, the vast majority of the electronics in there came from North America and Europe. We have sanctions in place against North Korea. We have sanctions in place against this technology getting to North Korea for exactly these reasons. And yet North Korea is able to produce huge quantities of these missiles for export. And the challenge, of course, is as soon as you've got a customer, as you well know as an industry guy, you can now invest in your production facilities and start to sell weapons a bit more widely than just into Russia. All of that fuels your own national military capability, which is exactly the reason we've got these sanctions in place.
So there's multiple markets going on here, all of them black. We've got a market that gets the bits from other countries in the world, the West, into North Korea somehow. You've then got another market between Russia and North Korea. I guess one thing that says is that Russia is running out of its armaments, so it has to go elsewhere. What better partner than North Korea? So what do we learn?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, one of which is North Korea's weapons, by all accounts, aren't very good. But the one attribute they have is they are dirt cheap and they're available today. Russia, as you say, is desperately in need of weapons, so it's turned to North Korea to provide them in a mutually beneficial arrangement because it creates currency for North Korea, which frankly needs it, but is fueling its own weapons and arms industry, and they've no doubt some of that money will find itself into its nuclear program. But the irony here is that Russia is a member of the United Nations. Russia was a member, is a member of the United Nations Security Council, a permanent member. It voted for the very resolutions that it's now ignoring. And you sort of go, well, what's the point of the United Nations?
Well, we've just met with Colin Bell, Second World War Mosquito bomber pilot, 50 missions. He said, never believe a despot. i.e. Putin.
I shouldn't be surprised, but I mean, Putin said he wasn't going to invade Ukraine, even when he got the forces massed and still went in.
Yeah.
He said when he signed the security arrangement for Ukraine to release, so Ukraine released all those nuclear weapons in the 1994 Budapest memo, I'm not going to ever invade. Basically, the word of these people is not worth anything. And if the United Nations, I mean, the Security Council has been in place for a long time now, and part of it is to create a paradigm, a bedrock in an uncertain world where
reliability.
People agree on what the foundations of our society are all about. And it's all very well lying about things. I'm sure every nation does this. But to actually now be directly contravening a United Nations resolution that was designed to stop North Korea getting nuclear weapons, actually Putin is now doing quite the opposite.
Sanctions documentation is maybe not worth the paper it's written on in these circumstances. Is the United Nations worth it as well? What does it say about them?
Well, I've long been an advocate for the United Nations because one of the reasons it was formed is that you've got to create mechanisms for people to talk to each other, to try and avoid conflict through at least talking. So the United Nations has got lots of countries in it who we don't necessarily consider our friends, but it forces people to get together and talk. There's been lots of talk before this latest conflict of it's all right well having a talking shop though, but where is its substance? Where are its teeth? And if it doesn't have teeth, what's it for? Because the danger is it therefore creates an illusion that we're a safer place when in fact it's being used for Machiavellian purposes. And that's my worry on this occasion, is that there's a growing evidence of proof now that Russia is importing weapons from North Korea and it is using them in the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's desperately short of weapons as well. That's why it's coming to the West. But going to North Korea specifically against a signatory for specific reasons and lying about it, I'm not sure where that leaves the UN longer term. Russia's making its bed and it will lay on it. Probably doesn't care. Almost certainly doesn't care about what they're doing. They just want to prevail at war and laughing at the West for believing that we won't do something similar. But I think that has worrying trends for the future, that people start to erode the very foundations of what our peaceful world is built on.